So my name, as Jenna said, is Shulamit Ber Lev Tov, and you can call me Shula for short. My pronouns are she and her. And how did I become the entrepreneur's therapist? What am I doing talking about entrepreneurship and mental health? Well, as most of you, I went to school or to my training wanting to learn about my craft or my art or my science, but it did not prepare me to be self-employed. It did not prepare me to run a business. And so right out of school, I jumped into business training, coaching, and hanging out with entrepreneurs. The first thing I did was join my local chamber of commerce, actually. And there I hung out with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I was the only therapist in the group. And I heard about challenges from them. I think that they were disclosing a little bit more about what they were going through mentally and emotionally to me because I was a therapist. And also, as my business grew and expanded, I also experienced the emotional roller coaster of running a business. And with my lens on mental health and business together, I became aware of the need for somebody who provides mental and emotional support, who also understands entrepreneurship. And that's how the entrepreneur's therapist was born. So, as I mentioned before, it's important to start from a resourced place. And so this is part of why we started with music, but also this is, hang on a second. There we go. This is also why I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself using your resilience. And so here are the 6 domains of resilience that were identified by a researcher in Australia. The psychometric scale is called the Predictive 6-Factor Resilience Scale. And so I invite you to take a look at this and pick the one that stands out the most, like kind of as, this is me, this is my thing, this is what I do. I'm really good at this particular skill. So I'll give you a moment, and I will also put in the chat a link to the graphic in case when I stop the screen share, you haven't had a chance to pick your resilience skill. And so how we're going to go around, I'm going to invite folks to go around to say your name and your pronouns, one resilience skill you have, and one sentence about why you picked this skill. And so for the sake of time and to foster connection, I'm asking for this way to introduce ourselves. And then after we've done this out loud, if you haven't already put your business information, I invite you to put that in the chat so that we can say our name, our pronouns, the skill you have, and one sentence about why you picked that skill. And I'll go first as an example. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that we can see one another. And I will call on someone and then say who's next. So I would say, for example, Shula, then Jenna. And then Jenna, then Tracy. And if we come to you and you want to pass, just say your name and say you want to pass. So I'm Shulamit. You heard me say that before. You can call me Shula for short, and my pronouns are she, her. And my resilience skill is connection. And I picked this skill because I faced many challenges in life and in business. And so I developed the skill of interpersonal connection to ask for and offer support. And so Jenna and then Tracy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna. My pronouns are she, her, and I picked the header of reasoning because I thought the 3 things underneath it sounded like me. Is that how, or are you supposed to pick one word out of the whole list?
It's whatever resonates with you, whatever the thing is that you went, this is me.
Well, the biggest one for me is creativity / problem solving.
Yes.
That's
yes. Me. Yeah. And do you have a sentence about why you chose that?
Because that is the essence of who I am, creativity and problem solving. I'm always solving problems and coming up with creative new ways to do things. And as you've seen by our membership program, so I'm always trying to innovate and create.
Thanks, Jenna. Tracy, then Candace. Oh, Tracy, we don't hear you. So you are unmuted, but for some reason you're not coming through. So Tracy, I'm going to pass on to Candace and then Yvonne, and Tracy, this will give you some time to troubleshoot. So Candace and then Siobhan.
Hello, I am Candace, she, her. I think the one that I picked was reasoning, because I am all three of those things. Part of my job as being a virtual assistant is to be given something and then to figure it out, which I can do pretty well. I am hard pressed to find something you could give me that I can't figure out. So yeah, that's why I picked that one.
Right on. Thanks,
Yvonne.
Candace. Yvonne, and then Morgan.
So my name is Yvonne Bradshaw, and my pronouns are she, her. I selected reasoning. I'm, for the first time in my life, probably happily sitting in my creativity. I've always been a problem solver. I anticipate and I plan, and resourcefulness is like my middle name. So that's kind of me.
Yay. Welcome, Yvonne. Morgan, and then Antonia.
Hi, I'm Morgan. My dogs are playing in the background, so you're going to have to hear that. My pronouns are she, her, and I picked the resourcefulness because that's just what I'm super good at. You give me a problem, I'll find the answer, and I'll do whatever it takes to find that answer.
Right on. Welcome, Morgan, Antonia, and then Emily.
Hi, my name is Antonia. My pronouns are she, her, and I chose connection. I'm known in my social group as the connector. I'm kind of really good at referring people to others, reaching out to my network, which I suppose is a bit of a resourcefulness skill as well. It's like interpersonal resourcefulness.
Yeah, there's an overlap there. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, welcome. Thank you. Emily, and then Nicole.
Hi, my name is Emily. My pronouns are she, her. I also chose reasoning. I'm a planner by trade. People hire me for that. I'm really good at anticipating risks and then trying to figure out how to plan around them. And I know I rely on it a lot. And so I've come to the realization that it's the other dimensions that I would like to lean on to increase my resilience.
Right on. Thanks, Emily. Welcome. Nicole, and then I'm hoping I'm saying Nasima, but you can correct me if I'm saying it incorrectly. Go ahead, Nicole.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Hi, thank you for having me. My pronouns are she, her. And I relate to both reasoning and tenacity, but I would say tenacity is a big strength of mine. Yeah, I don't give up.
Right on. Welcome, Nicole.
I don't give up, and if there's a no, I will then use my resourcefulness to problem solve and find another way. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Nasima, and then Diwu, and again, please correct me if I'm saying your names wrong.
Hi, my name is Nasima. My pronouns are she and her. I choose collaboration, especially the connection part, because I feel connected to the human community, and also I'm very good in referral and connecting my family and friends together and community and sharing the existing resource to each other. So I'm very well known with my collaboration skills, and that's why I chose it. Thank you.
Yay, welcome, Nasima. Thank you. Hi, Diwu.
Hi, call me Dee. Thanks for having me in this session. I'm based in Calgary, running a startup that does art classes and events for local communities. I'm here to learn from every one of you, share experience, and hopefully I'll learn something that can help me grow my business. Thank you.
Thanks, Dee. Welcome. And Kumara Singh, and then Tracy. And again, if I'm saying it wrong, Kumara Singh, please let me know.
Ma'am, I am Kumara Singha Sadira. I work Sri Lankan, working in Philippines in the fiberglass industry. We are doing the fiberglass products and all, but I have a mission for automation and all. Serving to Sri Lanka nation for the charity organization, school children and all, looking for moving to America for business setup and all. Nowadays, meeting the suppliers and all everybody in the Philippines for the business and proposal and waiting for collaboration and helping to each other. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks. And Tracy.
Hi, hi, can you hear me this time?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yay.
Yay.
I'm Tracy. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the owner of a community counseling agency in northern BC. And I would say one of the resources I picked was tenacity as well. And it's because as CEO of a small agency, I have to do a lot of things and be responsible for a lot of things. And so I don't have an option to give up. I have to keep going. And I think that has got, that skill has grown a lot in the last 5-6 years when I've been really operating a group agency in particular.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah. So for the sake of time, I was going to say a bit more about resilience, but I'll keep it short and put some references in the chat so that you can pursue the topic a little further. It's really important to recognize that many folks of the global majority have pointed out, especially those living in North America, have pointed out that the concept of resilience is really problematic. The real issue is not actually personal resilience. The real issue is the oppressive systems that require resilience from folks who are experiencing the harms that result from these oppressive systems. And the real way to develop resilience is to fight the system. We fight the system, like the song at the beginning, right? To dismantle these systems, especially white supremacist capitalism, right? And I mean, I'm a business owner myself. I'm not against business. I'm not against making money, but I am against white supremacist capitalism in its current manifestation. I think it causes a great deal of harm. So in the context of this discussion, resilience, and in the context of the research that I'm using, resilience means advancing our projects despite adversity. And all of us as entrepreneurs can recognize, and even in our personal lives, how important it is for us to be able to advance our projects despite the fact that we might face adversity. So it isn't about being unaffected. It isn't about bouncing back. It's a set of skills that are learned. If you don't have them now, you can cultivate them and then apply them proactively. And it's really important to acknowledge the role that privilege and adverse previous experience in your life, particularly in childhood, can impact your capacity to develop these resilience skills. And so the reason I say that is not that you shouldn't or you can't, but that often this kind of work is presented as, oh, just learn a new skill. But except it's easier said than done, and there are many intersecting influences on people's learning capacity. And so in the chat, I have included a critique of the concept of resilience that goes far further into depth than what I can mention today. Some information about adverse childhood experiences, some information about privilege, and information and a worksheet if you want to explore your resilience a little further and learn about ways that you can develop these particular skills. But now now you're coming to this workshop with a sense of, we're a resourced group of folks who have skills, and we have had to apply these skills in depth to our experience as entrepreneurs and to our experience today together in this workshop. So one of the keys to resilience is being proactive. And this is the point of having a mental health plan. So let's talk about now the risk side of things. And let's start about the working conditions of running a business. So I invite you to think about what it's like on the day-to-day to run a business. You might experience sleep deprivation because you can't sleep because you're too anxious, or because you're working late and you shorten the hours of sleep available, or you get up too early and work long days, or you just wake in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep. I don't know if any of you recognize this experience, but I would guess that from time to time that might be the case. You might experience food deprivation, like scarfing your meals, missing meals, putting meals off, back-to-back meetings so you don't have a chance to eat, not eating at all, and you get to the end of the day and you're like, I forgot to eat, right? Maybe you have no downtime, no time for leisure activities. Maybe you've experienced a day where you've been sitting cramped at the computer and haven't really moved your body, and you get up and go like, ooh, geez, like I'm sore and stiff, right? And perhaps there's not even time to go to the bathroom. Like, I don't know about you, but I've often, especially in the pandemic where it was much more common, but it's still common that you might have back-to-back meetings. And I show up at the meeting at the hour and say, I'm here, but I'm just going to take 5 minutes to go pee. Because that's just how it ends up some days. Am I right? Yeah. Yeah. So this might not be your experience all day, every day, but sometimes it can be back to back to back days like this, right? But let's, and this is valorized. This is glorified. Like, ooh, this is the hustle. This is entrepreneurship. This is what it is to run a business, right? Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, I'm so burnt out. But let's take these working conditions out of the context of entrepreneurship. And I invite you to consider sleep deprivation, hunger, enclosure in a room for hours on end, isolated from contact with other humans, prohibited from meeting your bodily needs, restricted physical activity. What does that sound like to you? So I invite you to put it in the chat. What does that sound like to you? Yeah. Slavery, imprisonment, neglect. Yeah. Prison. That's right. So I'm not for 1 minute saying that our experience is like that, because we're white, mostly, like, or global minority, sorry, in the majority of folks at this meeting. Well, actually, I'm not sure if it is, but in the context of North America, right, we're not experiencing any of these phenomena. However, these kinds of tactics are the kinds of tactics that are used by police and military all over the world to break people down. And so, when you look at it this way, is it any surprise that we break down when these are our working conditions? So I would say not. Mental health challenges are inherent in entrepreneurship. Our personal experience tells us this, and so does the academic and professional literature. And so I'm going to share my screen again. So the Canadian Mental Health Association surveyed 476 entrepreneurs about their experience of entrepreneurship. And the big takeaway from this, in this report, was that mental health is a missing priority in Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. And you can see the reports of the experiences of the folks that were surveyed in this survey done by the Canadian Mental Health Association. And so there's much more research, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on outlining. I'm glad, Nicole, to hear that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time outlining the data on the mental health and entrepreneurship research, but here is a reference where you can read more about it if you would like. So we have formal research and we also have informal research. And so from the work that I have done with entrepreneurs, I have identified these 7 factors that have an impact on your experience of entrepreneurship and your mental and emotional well-being as an entrepreneur. And it's not that non-entrepreneurs don't experience these things, and I'll talk about what they are briefly in a moment. but rather that we entrepreneurs experience them at the same time and in a different way. Like we can experience many at once and in a different way. So isolation, just briefly, we experience isolation because there are just fewer entrepreneurs, and the more intersecting systems of oppression you experience, the more isolated you will be in terms of being able to find peers. But also, we are often surrounded by people, by clients, by contractors, and so we can be peopled out and yet feel alone because we are holding space for them. They're not holding space for us. And so we often don't have, stuff comes up and there's people all around, but we feel lonely. So those are just two aspects of the isolation that we can experience. And I'll give you a reference when I come to the end of this brief discussion about these 7 factors so that you can explore them more in depth. The hustle, which I use as a stand-in really for systems of oppression, because the hustle is one of the impacts that comes from unexamined values. And we kind of fall, when we start a business, we can, if we don't reflect on these things, we can fall into the hustle without even really realizing. And especially at the beginning, when our businesses are new and it feels like a survival issue, it's quite natural that we would feel this impulse to hustle. But we live in a capitalist system that valorizes all kinds of not nourishing, not nurturing, not supportive, not mentally, emotionally, and physically healthy habits in the name of growth and money and consumption, those kinds of things. And if we, so this is just a stand-in for how all these things affect us and how we can end up by default engaging in these kinds of behaviors, and that the fact that they can harm us, harm our emotional and mental health. Then as entrepreneurs, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, known as VUCA. This is a term from the leadership literature that in the 80s. And like if we didn't realize that this was the case for us when we're running businesses, COVID really showed us that, because that was VUCA writ large, right? That we just had no idea. The ups and downs were unpredictable. We had no idea what was coming. The information we were receiving was complex, and it was also not clear. And we had to do our best to face that. And this is the case not only in COVID, but in any aspect of the business where these kinds of things can show up at any given moment. Whoops, going the wrong way. Barriers to professional support. So this includes mental and emotional support, but also support in our businesses when you're, entrepreneurial poverty is a thing. And when you're cash poor, then you don't always have access to the support you need, like a VA who could really alleviate a lot of the stress. And stress is a significant factor in mental and emotional well-being. It's also, yes, like Candace, but then also so that it's strategic and tactical support that can alleviate your mental and emotional distress, but also there is a lack of folks who understand the intersection of entrepreneurship and mental health. And so their capacity to support folks is limited because they don't have insight into the nature of the tactics that might be supportive to somebody running a business. Also, there's just general lack of access to mental health professionals, and the barriers that we experience go on and on. So I won't say more. For entrepreneurs, for all humans, we tend to link our self-worth to our success or failure. But in business, as entrepreneurs, we experience quote unquote success and quote unquote failure on like one morning you can be all about it. It can be great. This is what I do this for. And then somebody will not sign a contract in the afternoon, and suddenly your cash flow is impacted for the next 6 weeks, and you feel like, you're circling the drain emotionally, right? And when things go poorly, the tendency is to speak poorly to ourselves about ourselves, when in fact, they're not the same. And I'm recognizing that this is a very easier said than done kind of thing, to separate your sense of your self-worth and how you talk to yourself from the ups and downs in your business. So this is just a waypointer to help you recognize some of the things that are happening that are affecting you and the impact that they can have on your mental and emotional well-being. There's lots of research that shows that entrepreneurs share a predisposition to mental health challenges. We come from Michael Freeman, a psychiatrist and a psychologist in the US in, I think, 2014 or 2015, published research that showed that entrepreneurs came from a pool of people in the general population. Entrepreneurs tend to come from a pool of people in the general population who are already experiencing mental health challenges. And in addition, many folks actually come to self-employment because they want to address the lack of accommodation in the majority world for the needs that they have, some of which are mental health needs, but also folks with disability and also folks with intersecting oppressions who, when they discovered, when they got to go home for COVID, how much better their mental health was at home because they didn't have to deal with the so-called microaggressions in the workplace. And then they decided, well, that's it then. I'm going to create my own safer workplace by running my own business instead of going back to the office. So there's a complexity of the predispositions that we can experience as entrepreneurs to mental health challenges. And then finally, the secret invisible seventh factor is that all these 6 others amplify one another. We experience more than one at a time, and they are not additive. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. They are exponential. Each one makes the other ones heavier to carry. So if you recognize any of these, I can see that a few folks are commenting in the chat about some of the stuff that's coming up for them around these 7 factors, and I've provided a link there for you to look into this in greater depth. But really, I'm just naming your experience. This is how I compiled these 7 factors, is just from paying attention and listening to the entrepreneurs that I've been working with, right? And this is just naming your experience. So I see that there's a hand up, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Go ahead, Nicole.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. Like literally, this is blowing my mind right now. I work with entrepreneurs. I work in a nonprofit organization that helps immigrant refugee women and women from underserved communities get entrepreneurship training, access to resources, funding, etc. And you are putting language to a lot of the challenges that I see that our women face. Because we do this 3-month training program, we do webinars, we do one-on-one technical assistance, et cetera, but I don't see like this progression that, you know, like this, the impact isn't deep. You know, there are very, very few percentage of the women that go through our program that actually like move forward in their business and are able to be quote unquote successful, whatever that means to them, right? And one of the things that I, you know, would, a lot of the things that they're like, they feel overwhelmed with all the different things that they have to do because they're owner operators. And I'm like, well, when you're able to financially, I recommend that you know, find a bookkeeper, find somebody to run your social media, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, that's not going to really most likely not happen because they're so overwhelmed right now. And like you said, what they need is access to those support systems. And so it's really like making me rethink how we're supporting the women that we serve. It's, well, really, and then the mental health challenges, that really is something that is so true. And I love how you said that people are looking for, you know, other ways of making income and through entrepreneurship because the, you know, current workplaces and systems, this isn't made for them. So I
100%.
appreciate all of this, and thank you for allowing me to share.
You're welcome. Thank you for the feedback, Nicole. It's always, I mean, I'm sad and happy, right? Because I'm happy to know that I'm hitting the mark. I'm sad to know that this is what folks are going through, right? Like it just sucks that it has to be so hard sometimes.
Yeah.
And it really super sucks that there are systems that double the weight we have to carry. It really sucks. And so you're pointing out something that's really important. We're talking about how we can care for our mental health, but there are systemic and communal. It's not only self-care and care from a therapist or a professional, it's communal care and addressing the systems, taking systemic action as we are capable to be able to make some changes. And those are mental health tactics and strategies that are as important on an equal balance with anything that we can do one-to-one for ourselves or, with professional support. So if it isn't clear yet why we need a mental health plan, let me tell you a little bit more. As I mentioned, the essence of resilience, both personal and in business, is being resourced and prepared, right? And in our businesses, plans are how we recognize and mitigate risk. And risks are inherent in entrepreneurship across the board, not only mental health risks, but financial risk and all other kinds of risks. We're taking risk all the time. And so in our businesses, we have a business plan. If we don't have one written, we have one in our head. We have a financial plan, we have a marketing plan, we have a cash flow forecast, or we have an idea of what we are doing to address those issues in our business. So should we not then also have a mental health plan as an integral part of our business plan? I would say yes, because we are our business's greatest and most valuable asset. And so it's important to take action to protect it. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the elements of your plan, and then we'll be putting them together. So first I have to set the context. So the name of this workshop is Keeping Your CEO Self in the Driver's Seat, but what the heck is your CEO self? So I invite you to imagine that this is like your spinal column. This here is the back of your brain, what you might recognize is sometimes called the reptilian brain. And then we come around to the front of your head. This is what we would call the midbrain. It includes the amygdala and the hippocampus. There's much more to this. This is a very lay explanation, but for the purposes of our mental and emotional well-being, we want to be aware of this aspect of the midbrain that is involved in cues of safety and danger and in emotions. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for our executive functioning, hence why I call it the CEO self. And what will happen is that our nervous system, data will come in through the nervous system. It'll travel, it'll be perceived by all our various organs of perception, including the nervous system. It'll come up the spinal column, come to the midbrain first. And the midbrain, as I mentioned, is always looking for safety and danger. It's kind of like a bunny, right? Always on guard for the bear. And if it detects danger, the amygdala, the emotion center, gets hot, it gets activated. And if you think like a pot where the contents start to boil, what happens? Eventually, if it boils for long enough or gets hot enough, we flip our lids. And what that means in the context of the human brain and in the context for entrepreneurs, when our emotions are high, we lose access to our CEO self. It stops communicating with the rest of us. And all we have to run on are emotions and our memories, or our habits associated with those particular emotions. And those are important, that's important data, but it's not the whole story. And when we run on those alone, we end up in trouble. And what we need to do is to keep the CEO self in communication with the rest of us. And so the question becomes then, how do we support the CEO self? How do we keep our CEO self in the driver's seat? And so I'm going to share the screen again. The 3 principles of stress resilience are tactics you can use to support your mental and emotional well-being. And you can use them on a daily basis as well as in the moment, so that on a daily basis, you keep when you use them on a daily basis, and I'll explain in detail what these are in a moment. When you engage in these behaviors on a daily basis, it helps keep your nervous system more stable, more on an even keel. And that way, you are less likely to flip your lid. And when you do flip your lid, you can use these things to help bring your lid back on and help your CEO self come back into communication with the rest of you. And the reason that I offer these principles of behaviors, of actions in which we can engage is, have you ever said to yourself, oh, calm down? And what good did it do? Right? Or has anybody ever said to you, yeah, don't be anxious, come on, relax? What happens? Like, it's not helpful, right? I don't know. I just want to kind of like pow right in the kisser. It doesn't help me. I know I need to relax, but how? Right? The bunny, the midbrain, responds to experience over language. It needs to feel, to sense, to be engaged in behaviors that send the message to it that it is okay and alive. And it's like getting a balance. You know, there are a lot of threat messages of danger, danger, even though it's not a bear, it's the phone call or the email or the deadline, right? And to balance the threat messages with the it's okay, I'm alive, I've survived messages, right? Because we can't eliminate threats. We can't eliminate risk. That's the nature of being in business. But we can aim for some kind of flow between these 2 kinds of messages. And so the 3 principles of stress resilience are the second element of your plan. The 7 factors that we talked about earlier are the first element of your plan. So to soothe, discharge, and nourish, soothing your nervous system is when you go, whatever it is that makes you go, right? And it's not the same for everybody. So hot baths are not for everybody. Deep breathing is not for everybody. This is why I'm offering you a principle that you can explore. Discharging specifically has to do with moving your body, not necessarily exercise, and moving your emotions, not necessarily therapy. What it is that works for you to allow the emotions to move and to allow your body to move. And then nourishing is a really wide category that involves a sense of things greater than you, a sense of nourishing and uplifting. So when I say things greater than you, it could just be connection and belonging in family and community, or it could be something spiritual like nature or something religious. It's a very wide category. And so your experience of what nourishes you, what renews your spirit and fills your soul will inform what your tactics are in this area for soothing, discharging, and nourishing your nervous system. And this is just a brief overview because of the time that we have. And I'm going to put in the chat a more detailed outline of these principles so that you can learn more. So I'm also going to give you in the link the worksheets that you will need. And I invite you to click and download the worksheet or to just look at the questions that are in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that we can come back together. The 3 principles are soothe, discharge, and nourish. And I'm just putting them in the chat so that you can remember. And I invite you now to take about 5 minutes to think about what of these 3 principles you are already doing. What tactics are you using to soothe, discharge, and nourish yourself? Maybe there were things that you used to do to soothe, discharge, and nourish yourself, and you're missing doing them. And then perhaps one teeny tiny, itty bitty, doable little thing to either soothe, discharge, or nourish your nervous system that you might like to add in. So I'm seeing now that it's 5 to the hour-ish. And what I'd like to do is invite you to take a break now. While you reflect on these, you can also take time to stretch, grab a snack, go to the bathroom, and come back. Well, here's the invitation around coming back. I'm going to start at 5 after the hour. And I invite you to check in with yourself about how much time you need for a break. Because again, scarcity of time has a significant impact on mental and emotional well-being, right? And this workshop is being recorded, so you're not going to miss anything. You can go back and check it out later. I'm going to start at 5 after the hour, and we will start with a discussion around these 3 questions when we come back. So Jenna, you have some tunes for us, and I'll see whoever feels like they're ready at 5 past the hour. And meanwhile, enjoy your break in the music.
Jitterbug. 3, 2, 1.
So welcome the folks who are here. So much juice, so juicy in the chat. I'm going to speak to that, but because I've been talking for so long, I really want to hear from you all. So if you have something that you would like to share about your 3 principles of stress resilience, your experience with them, what you do, any kind of insights you had, or anything, any kind of feedback so far, the floor is open and you're welcome to just take the mic.
I think my interesting observation, is
Hey,
that,
Candace.
hello. My interesting observation is that a lot of the entrepreneurial things are also linked to a lot of personal things. You know, kind of like I'm getting in my own way, like I won't, or one of the ones is like linking your self-worth to success. So like I do that in my personal life, but then also in the entrepreneur life. So it's almost like I'm getting in my own way, just like, you know, not taking care of myself, and I guess realizing that that's not where my worth is, for lack of a better term. But yeah, and then like I was saying in the chat, like a lot of things around like tie together, like feeling like I tend to isolate myself when I get upset, but then further down through the worksheets, you know, then that isolation factor of the risks really pops out, and it's like, oh, this is all tying together.
This is really important, Candace, what you're talking about. They do. And I mean, that's why I have the secret 7th factor, right? Is that everything is all connected is what it comes down to. And you're pointing that out in a very poignant way. And I love what you said about when you have depression, you just want to lie down. Well, lying down is a soothing and nourishing behavior. There's nothing the matter with it. The problem for all our so-called coping mechanisms is when they become the only resource we have, right? And so it's perfectly all right to cuddle up with your favorite blanket and a hot water bottle and put your head under the covers or whatever it is that you do in the context of a plan, formal or informal, for how you're going to care for yourself. And
but then
yes,
if my self-worth is tied to my productivity and I'm not being as productive as I can while I'm laying down,
yes,
that's where I have the problem, which is how this all ties together, which is lovely.
You're so right. And I invite you to think about productivity and the fact that that concept alone is rooted in Calvinism. It's rooted in the ethics of the Pilgrim invaders who invaded and colonialized North America. And that it's a value that we might want to think critically about, because that's another thing that gets tied to our self-worth is our productivity, right? Like, I'm only a worthy person if I've done X, Y, Z. I'm only allowed to rest if I've earned my rest. And those are all, I am certain that not a one of us on this call espouses the ideology. And yet, without clarity around that, we end up oppressing ourselves with these ideas that we haven't even examined, right? Like, what does it even mean to be productive? And even if we do want to endorse the principle of productivity, we can define for ourselves what productivity means. And in my opinion, the essence of mental health, my training is rooted in the work of Eugene Gendlin and Carl Rogers. And Carl Rogers in particular, his approach to psychotherapy was actually the first one researched. He was the first researcher into mental health in North America. And he found, his belief is that our mental and emotional well-being relies on self-connection and in nurturing our self-actualization and our life forward impulse, as opposed to complying with social convention. And in fact, complying with social convention, he didn't put it in these terms. I'm using modern language for what Carl Rogers said, but complying with social convention is actually quite harmful, right? If it's not what's in alignment with our life forward impulse. And so I'm just inviting you to think about this productivity and think about what you want to make it mean for you. Because I'm not dissing what we need to do, that we do need to have parameters, and there are things that we do want to get done in our businesses. And we can decide how that goes. We can decide what that means for ourselves. And so the floor is still open for more. If there's anything around these 3 principles or anything around what we've talked about before now, the floor is open, and you can just grab the mic, state your name, and take it away. I see Nicole. Go ahead.
Yeah. I do a little bit of 2. So I think the nourish, I had to come in and come out. So
Right.
I lost the words. So I think one of them was, like sometimes I remember to breathe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I remember to visualize. Sometimes I remember that, but not always. And then the other one was,
I just put them in the chat for you, Nicole.
Oh, so that was soothe, right?
Yeah.
And then nourish was more of like spiritual connection. So sometimes I remember to do that as well. Or I have a spiritual practice, but I'm not consistent. So I think for me, it's the issue is more about being able to be consistent with these practices.
Yes. And you've hit on something that's really important. We'll talk about a little bit later. And I do want to point out the nuance around nourishing, that it is not exclusively spirituality. It can also be other sources of connection, like friends, family, community, belonging, those kinds of things. Thank you, Jenna, for putting the worksheet in the chat. And Yvonne, please go ahead, take the mic.
So I've struggled my whole life to find that the balancing point. And I gotta say that where most people complain about menopause is actually like seriously my superpower, because shit got real. And I stopped torturing myself. I stopped being mean and nasty to myself in all of those little ways that you don't even realize that you're being mean and nasty to yourself. And so I put myself first at the start of every day. And that is a deal breaker. If I can't start the day and put myself first, it's probably not a day I'm going to enjoy. And we're going to spend a lot of time in soothing later on for it. But every day that nourish is that's got to feed my soul so I can survive the day. I can be resilient throughout the day. So getting out, getting into nature, going for a walk. Sometimes it's half an hour, sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's with my camera, sometimes it's just with nothing. I'm completely disconnected from everybody and everything, and I just walk the world. And it's fantastic. But the discharge is one I didn't understand the value of until I came to it organically now, and recognizing that when I'm at that point where I call it living below the 50, that 50% where you're in the ugly half of your life and you're just want to get out. I realize the more I fight it with the I need to get out of this space, the worse I make it. So I instantly go to soothe and walk away from whatever. And I got to tell you, I found that gives me the strength, the resilience, the energy, the passion to go back later on and do what it was that gave me the in the first place. So I'm recognizing how important that relationship is between soothe, discharge, and nourish. And if you're not giving yourself some of that every day, and that's the shift for me now. I used to pick and choose and, today you can have some of this. No, every day I have to give myself some component of each of those.
Yes, I'm appreciating that you're saying that. And I'm appreciating especially how you brought up what it's like to be kind of in an argument with yourself about how you actually are. And that moment of like, okay, well, this is just how it is. So now what? That's really, for me, the definition of acceptance is not going along with it, not saying, oh, okay, fine. Like the story I use around acceptance is like as if you've planned a family picnic in October. And in October, the weather can be either way. It can be snowing or it can be 80 degrees, right? And you walk out the door on the day of the family picnic and it's snowing. And, some people would just be, oh, shoot, it's snowing. I'm just going to go ahead with this anyways. And then everybody's miserable and it's a big disaster. Or you could stick your head out the door and go, oh, well, it's snowing. Now what am I going to do? Right? That's acceptance, because you've taken in the data that's available and said, well, how am I going to respond in light of the data I have at hand? And that's what you're doing, is you're like, oh, I'm in the shitty 50 half, bottom half. What am I going to do now? How am I going to, instead of fighting that, what am I going to do? What's my next step now that I know that's what's going on? Right? And that's an empowered, many people associate acceptance with like doormat kind of powerlessness, but in fact, acceptance is a pretty empowered state when you consider what I'm doing is taking in the data and using it to make a decision about what I'm going to do next. I love that you brought that up. Yeah. And the floor's open for more. You can just grab the mic, say your name, and take the floor.
Hi, it's me, Jenna. I can share.
Hey, Jenna, go ahead.
For me, I was like, put this in the chat, like I do one of them, you know, like a day kind of. I didn't even consider the whole trifecta until you had presented it as like a mechanism to what I was doing. Because for me, my discharge is that I play sports, I play roller derby, or I'll go to the gym. Like I do a physical, like literally a physical thing. And those things always make me feel better. I always feel like, you know, I got in the zone and I'm not focused on whatever the thing was before. But I do that once a week. But, you know, I like, it's not every day that I go and discharge and do something like that. So you know, for same thing with soothing, and the same thing with nourishing. Like they're just a small fraction of the week, and then I'm wondering why you know, I'm so ready for the weekend, right? Like why am I so ready for Saturday, and then Sunday afternoon I'm like, oh, because I try to cram everything in those like 2 days of that whole cycle to be ready for the rest of the week.
Yeah. So I love that you're pointing this out, that the flow between the three is really important, you and Yvonne both. And I want to offer a caveat, because this is what we tend to do, is we oppress ourselves, right? We say, oh, this is a standard. I have to do all three of these every day. And we also tend to think in terms of like a very high bar, right? That I have to take an hour to work out and an hour for my spirituality and an hour for, yes, I think weekends are a creation of capitalism. In fact, and my understanding is that it's the union movement that gave us the weekend, and that the weekend was carved tooth and nail out of a 7 where we just worked all the time, and working all the time is a capitalistic thing. Yeah, for sure. So my invitation to you is to think of these things as teeny tiny, itty bitty little doable things in the moment. For example, the 3 minutes we spent listening to music at the beginning of this workshop. That's all it takes to discharge when you stand up and move to the music. A couple moments of full focus on cuddling with a critter. That's all it takes. 5 minutes, right? For our lives, in our businesses, we don't need more work. We don't need more things on our to-do list. We don't need more stuff that takes a lot of organization, like to get away to the spa or to take a vacation or to find an hour in your day to work out, which is not bad. But I want you to hear clearly that that my invitation is to look for how you're already doing these things and prioritize them, and notice and acknowledge that you're doing them, which is how you get the most out of something, right? To be like, oh, right, this is my stress resilience practice. I'm really gonna like throw myself into this. But also to notice teeny tiny itty bitty little things that you can do moment to moment throughout the day that aren't a big production, but that really make a difference. Yeah, always doing the most all the time. So how do we put all this together? So we've just talked about these 3 principles, and we talked about the 7 factors. These are your lag and lead indicators for your mental and emotional well-being. So you can see a lead indicator is what leads to outcomes, and it includes the 7 factors. These are things that are situational and out of our control. And the 3 principles, the things that are in your control, that are tactical goals. So we just went through this, and this is on your worksheet on page 3, you can do it again at home, right? We identified some of your lead indicators, the things you need to do or that you are already doing that help determine your outcomes, your lag indicators, right? Self and communal care. So for example, communal care, reaching out to friends and family, having potlucks, hanging out with folks, but also activism, right? Joining the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce, to be involved in activism for other kind of less policy oriented and more day-to-day oriented, whatever it is that speaks to you, right? Because when you're in a community that's working towards things that are in alignment with your values, that's also nourishing. To be connected with others who care for you and who share care for some of the larger issues, that's a nourishing thing as well. So self and communal care, but the self-care includes both the things you know you'll have negative consequences, but you do anyway, as well as things you know that set you up for success. And we'll talk again about how to use these in a moment. And then the conditions. So the self and communal care is your 3 principles, and the conditions, what's happening to you and in your world, is the 7 principles. But I invite you to consider this when you think about what are you going to be doing for soothing and nourishing. And this is from Trisha Hersey. Her Instagram account is the Nap Ministry, and her book is Rest is Resistance. Let me see if I got I know I have yep. Here's the reference. I'll put it in the chat. And you can read it, but she also has it on audiobook. And the way that rest disrupts and pushes back against capitalism and white supremacy is basically because it resists hustle culture, right? It resists the constant and frantic busyness that doesn't give us a chance to look up and to notice, why are we frantic? Why are we constantly busy and absorbed? Why are we pushing ourselves to produce? Rest is the opposite of that. And rest doesn't only mean sleeping. Rest has a very wide range of meanings. And so Trisha explores that at length. And so you might like to check that out. So we've talked about lead indicators, but what the heck is a lag indicator? A lag indicator is what happens as a result of your lead indicators. So it includes symptoms, mental, physiological, spiritual, and emotional symptoms. And it also includes what we might call signs of being in balance, the things when it's going well, right? And so I'm going to stop sharing and come back to the group, because this concept of lag and lead, if there are any questions about that or any feedback about the idea of lag and lead indicators and how they work together, questions, the floor is open for that, so that you can, this is a concept that's fundamental to the plan. And so I want to give an opportunity for questions if there are any questions or feedback. So you can grab the mic, say your name, and go ahead.
My name is Candace, and
hey,
moving
Candace.
forward, I am going to be using naps to fight capitalism, and also sharing that with everybody I know, because that's amazing.
Isn't it cool? Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're excited about it. It's important also, just like resilience, to recognize that the access to rest, like access to food and access to money and access to comfort and ease, is dependent on privilege. And the more privilege you have, the more access you have to rest. So it's easy for me, a Western woman living at a certain standard with a home that's not under threat, where my food is secure, my food supply is secure, and all that kind of stuff, for me to say, yeah, go take a nap, right? And not so easy for folks as a function of their access to privilege. So it's important to recognize that, even at the same time as we say it's a good thing to do. Yeah. Any questions about the idea of lag and lead indicator?
I have a question. Is like lag bad and lead good? Like, not that I'm trying to binary.
Thank you for asking.
But like, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it's a progression, really. It's cause and effect. So lead is the cause, lag is the effect. And the effect, we can either enjoy the effect or not enjoy the effect. And if we don't enjoy the effect, that's the feedback we need to think then again about what are our lead indicators. And this is really the nature of the mental health, how you implement your mental health plan, where you can check in with your lag indicators on a regular basis and see what lead indicators are involved and if anything you want to change about that, so that if you're not enjoying your lag indicators, or if you want more, if you really love what you're experiencing as a lag indicator and you want more of that, what can you change to give you more of that? How does that land, Jenna? Okay. So let's go on to our lag indicators. We've talked a lot about our lead indicators, the 3 principles and the 7 factors, right? But let's talk about your lag indicator and how to identify lag indicators. Lag indicators are the things, they look backwards. They measure what happened afterwards, which is why we use the term lag. It's from business. I'm just stealing business terms. They're key performance indicators, your lag and lead indicators. And so I put in quotation marks symptoms, because these are the things, headaches, trouble sleeping, all the stuff we don't like that is immediately obvious, right? But it also includes the good side of things, the things we enjoy, but it's less obvious to us. It's easy to notice when something's happening that we don't like, and not so easy to notice when something's happening that we do like, right? And so it also includes so-called performance indicators in your business. Like you can look at how much energy you have to do things in your business, how much, and even you can look at output. Sometimes, like for example, if your marketing activity is Instagram Live, and you look back at a month, and you say, wow, I only did 1 live and I really wanted to do 4. And that's a function of the fact that I'm just too damn tired because I didn't have enough to nourish me last month, right? Like you can see how they play together. And so the idea is to identify what they are, and so that you can keep track of them. And so I invite you to take a look at how you know you're stressed and what tells you you're doing okay. And so I invite you to take 5 minutes. Let me see what time it is here. It's 1:27. So let's come back at, I'll stay here but I'll close my mic, and you can spend some reflection time to brainstorm around these. And then I'll open the mic for some discussion around it. So I will stop sharing my screen, and I've put in the chat what, oh, did I stop sharing already? Yes, I did stop sharing. All right, there in the chat is what I'm inviting you to reflect on, and you can take 5 minutes to do that, and I'll come back at 1:33-ish or so. So you can take another minute or so to finish your reflection. And think about if you might like to share, and if so, what you might like to share. Yeah, and we'll give Jenna a chance to stop the music, and then we can open the floor for some feedback around what you notice when you're stressed and when you're doing okay. And the floor is open. You can just grab the mic, say your name, and take it away.
It's Yvonne here.
Hey, Yvonne.
So when I'm stressed, when I'm having my little breakdown, you know, my body immediately, my shoulders start to creep up towards my ears. I have a very short attention span, and it's difficult for me to kind of really be present in the moment. My muscles all tighten up from my legs straight up the whole spinal cord, and my mind races. So it kind of ping pongs. And doesn't really spend a whole lot of time focused on anything. And actually what I end up doing is wasting a lot of time. And when I say I'm wasting time, it's because I don't know what I'm doing in those minutes, it could be an hour or whatever. And what other people get from me and what they do notice is that I feel very scattered when I'm sitting in that space. And it took a long time to be able to figure out all the components of what that looks like and feels like in my body, and then how do I respond to that. So I can really appreciate a lot of people not being in tune with that sensation and what it feels like.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think the things you pointed out, many of the things you pointed out are universals, because what happens when the bunny sees the bear is the bunny gets ready to run, right? And it's not that we actually do run, we often don't run, but our body has that running energy and that running mentality and that running focus, right? That's like we can't pay attention to this because we got to like survive. And all those bodily sensations accompany that, right? And those things that you've named often are experienced by many folks. Yeah, thank you. And the floor is open for more. You can just grab the mic and say your name and take it away.
I like to share.
Hey, go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, so this exercise was really enlightening, because it's like I'm writing everything down and I'm seeing on paper just how like it's not really serving me. The lead, you know, the consequences of you know, some of the leads, and like for instance, when I'm breaking down, my body feels heavy, fatigued. I experience fibromyalgia flare up. Can't focus. My mind feels overwhelmed, drained, unable to problem solve. I tend to lean towards sadness and feeling numb. I get feedback like, you're always tired, or you're young. Like, how can you, you know, why are you so tired? Or you should be eating clean. You should be doing exercise. Like all of these like messages I get from the outside. Usually like I'm eating a lot of salty and sweet snacks. I oversleep, and I numb myself out with TV. And then as a result of that, I'm not really spending quality time with friends and family, which is really sad because connection is one of my values. You know, I don't take care of myself or do things that bring me joy, like going outside, and nurturing myself, moving my body. So basically, like when I'm feeling good, it's like the total opposite.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks so much, Nicole. That's really important. to be able to recognize, and that's the point of this exercise, is to be able to recognize those signals of distress as signals that, like eating quote unquote too much salty or sweet, right? It's not a moral judgment, but rather to notice, oh, my body is craving these things because it's in distress, because it needs soothing. And that means that I need to look under the hood. It's like the check engine light on the dashboard. Oh, right. Oh, I should be checking into what's going on, because this is a signal, right, that something needs attention. And being awake to the signals helps us be empowered to then care for ourselves. And so identifying, like you've done, will help you kind of twig to, oh yeah, wait a minute, there's something going on. Yeah. So lag indicators are often considered measures of success, right? Like I talked about performance options or performance measures or whatever. I forget what I said, but anyways, performance indicators, that's what I said. But what if we considered this as a measure of success? What if? So I offer this just for your consideration, another gem from Tricia Hersey. So it's really important to consider that having a plan, because we're moving into now putting all the pieces together, but it's really important to know that having a plan is not going to prevent you from having a hard time. The plan you're going to make identifies strategies that you can use to care for yourself in an ongoing way. And caring for yourself in a systematic and ongoing way can mitigate the impact of a hard time. But it's a myth to think we can avoid what it means to be human. It's a myth to think that entrepreneurship is always going to be a walk in the park, right? It's in the nature of being human and in the nature of entrepreneurship to experience hard times and difficult emotions. And so the point of having this plan is not prevention, but rather, or to make things go away, right? It's not a magic bullet, but rather to give ourselves, to have a plan so that we don't have to think on the fly, so that we can give ourselves care when we're having a hard time. And again, to help put things in place so that when we have a hard time, it's not as hard as it would be without these things. So it's like a marathon runner or any other kind of high-performing athlete, right? It looks like it's the individual, Michael Jordan, or I don't know, I can't name a hockey player right now. But I think of King Henry, the goalie, right? It looks like each of them are performing as high athletes, right? That they're high performance. But in fact, while the individual is the face of it all, they have a whole team behind them. They have the chiropractor, the massage therapist, the doctor, the nutritionist, the coach, the sports psychologist. They have a whole team, right? Because we are stronger with support. We are stronger when we support ourselves, and we are stronger when we support one another. We are stronger when we have a team. And part of our work around mental health is building this team, not only of practitioners, but also of strategies or tactics that support us. So how do we put this all together? So I'm going to give you a handout that covers all this. But first, I want to say the big challenge for implementation is accountability. I don't know if you've done a big plan for something and put it in the drawer and then never looked at it again. It doesn't really matter if you do the formal plan. What matters is implementation and support and accountability. And so the simplest way, now that you've got the data, you've got a beginning flavor of the information that you got today, means that you're aware of it and attuned to it, and you can add these issues to every discussion you have with somebody who's supportive of you. And you can invite them into a conversation. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, without like, hi, how are you? Oh, fine. How are you? Fine. Right? But rather, really, let's take a moment to check in with one another. How are you? How am I? Right? Or getting more focused, you can add it into discussions with people like your biz bestie or your entrepreneurship group. You could come to a CAN WCC networking event and bring it into the conversation there. You can add awareness of your lag and lead indicators into every business conversation you have. You can bring it to your coach, right? You can bring it even, as you're comfortable, to networking events in person, where when you're having a schmooze with somebody, you can, talk about how you're doing, or just talk about the concept, what you learned at this workshop, right? That's a very simple way. The next simplest way is to take a weekly look at what worked, what didn't, what lessons am I drawing from what worked and what didn't, and what am I going to change or keep the same as a function of what worked and what didn't. Even more formally now is what you see on the slide here, which is how to use your mental health plan in a very formal way. And I'm putting that in the chat. So first of all, like you did today, you've looked at what your lag and lead indicators are. And so you could sit down and take a half an hour and more formally record those on paper somewhere, or electronically somewhere where you can refer to them, right? So that you have them on paper instead of having to keep them in your head. Then on a weekly basis, you assess the performance of the lag and lead indicators in relationship to one another. And then you review what worked and what didn't work for each of these. And then you make a plan, just like I mentioned, but it's more formal, right? That you would write it down. And then quarterly and yearly. So the way I do my planning for my business is that I use the, the 90-day or the 12-week year, which means that every quarter I do kind of an overarching plan. And then every month I take what I did on the quarter and make it for the month, and then go from the month to the week. And every week I review and tweak depending on because sometimes the big plan you made doesn't relate to the current circumstances and you need to tweak it. And so on a quarterly or yearly basis, you need to take a look at if the things you've chosen for Soothe, Discharge, and Nourish are still relevant for the situation, for your circumstances. So for example, I consider myself like the queen of self-care as a trauma survivor and a therapist. I need to have my ducks in a row around self-care in order to be able to do my work. But then COVID hit, and all of a sudden I was feeling really distressed, and I'm like, what the matter with me? I got this. Ooh, that's my reminder that we have 15 minutes left to go. I'm the queen of self-care. What's the matter with me? I'm doing all the things I should do. Why do I still feel like crap? But it's like I was a professional baseball player, right, with very high level athletic skills, but I was thrown into a football game. So I still had my athletic skills, but they didn't suit the context. I needed to understand the rules of the football game and adapt what I was doing to the context of football. And so that's the kind of thing where when your situation or your circumstances change, you need to take another look at what you've got for your lag and lead indicators. And it doesn't have to be a whole big deal. It can be just a really informal thing. And so this is my informal way of doing it, where you can see I just would scribble it. And you can see I have my lag and lead indicators. I looked at my lessons and my wins. And I was just taking quick notes. And you can see under my lead indicators, I have my 7 factors. And then I wrote down under the 3 principles. And sometimes you'll see that there's overlap. Things that soothe may also discharge. Things that nourish may also soothe, right? It's just you choose one that is more in order to fit them. You choose, if it's more soothing, put it in soothing, even if it's both soothe and nourish, So you can see how I just scribbled it out in my informal way, and I kept track of that on a regular basis. And I'm going to show you something more. This is a more formal way of doing it. I use Notion database as my my business planning process. And so I do a weekly review every week, and you'll see at the top here, it's not important what's there, but this is, just my regular business review. But then I come down to my mental health review, and I've listed for myself so that I don't have to remember or think about it. They're just there, and I make my notes underneath. And then I have what worked and what didn't work and my lessons. And then here's my weekly plan. My big 3 are my goals for myself for that week, the things that I need to knock out for my business on a particular week. So maybe sending a newsletter, making a podcast pitch and doing a live on Instagram, right? That might be my big 3 for the week. But I also schedule or set reminders for the things that I've chosen to do up here in my plan. You know, what will I keep, improve, start, or stop doing? I make sure that I've got them somewhere so that I can keep track and pay attention. And so that's the really like complex way that you can do it. Although I have to say, I do this whole process every week, and it really takes me, I don't know, if I wanted to, I like to take like an hour just to give myself time and space to reflect. But this, you know, it could take me like 15 minutes if I wanted it to. And so I will give you the worksheets again. I know you've had the link already, but I'll just send it again. And so now that's the end of the formal stuff, but the floor is open now for feedback and questions. So you can just grab the mic, say your name, and take it away. And while
So
we sit
Yvonne
together.
here.
Oh, go ahead, Yvonne.
I want to thank you. In the last 5 years of my life have moved so fast that I haven't really, I know the changes and the shifts, and I've acknowledged them as we go, but I don't often stand back and look at the whole picture and what all of those shifts have brought me to. And so this has been a wonderful reminder of how important it was for me to do the first half of my life. I just lived it. And I ran with whatever came at me. I just kept running through it. And I determined that with the second half of my life, I wanted to do everything with intent. And so in setting myself up for doing everything with intent, I hadn't fully sat down and acknowledged how much work I had done to get to this place and why this place is so important to me. So when I attend something like this and I get a minute to go, wait a minute, hey, actually, yeah, girl, look what you did. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's fantastic. And it gives me that opportunity to share, because it's not something anyone ever tells you, okay, this is the goal. No one ever tells you what the goal is. You've got to figure it out as you kind of work along. But when I'm working with a group of incredible women like this and getting that feedback and understanding what their perspective is, it really helps me figure out what my goals are. And this is where I am today. How do I get to where I want to get to tomorrow? So thank you so much for this. The amount of resources I'm coming out of this with are incredible. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. And I'm really appreciating how you point out that where our attention goes, energy flows, right? What we nurture flourishes. And just like we nurture our businesses by paying attention to things in our business, we can also nurture our mental and emotional well-being by paying attention to it, right? And that helps it to grow and flourish. So thank you so much. That's really like a really important insight. And while the floor is still open, I did want to say the greatest gift you could offer me in response to this workshop would be to fill out my feedback form. That would really help me a lot, and I would really be very grateful for that. And the floor is open for more. Just grab the mic, say your name, and go ahead with insights, questions, problems, whatever's coming up for you. Go ahead,
because I know
Candace.
that I received this the alert for this webinar in a couple different places, but like, is there a place to review it? Like, how can we support
I put it in
you
the,
and like boost you?
Yes, I put it in the chat. The link to the feedback form is in the chat. Sorry, I should have said when I was asking for feedback, there's the I put it in the chat. Thank you for asking, Candace.
No worries. I just know that like with all the different like systems and stuff, like
Yes,
with the
yes.
Google reviews and the LinkedIn recommendations and
Yeah.
stuff, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, to echo what Yvonne was saying, like I really appreciate that you put this together and made it like you took the concepts that are kind of hard as an entrepreneur to like quantify, and you've kind of broken them down into ways that are very much like reflective of how I would break down like a task for a client or a task for myself.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
like because of that, my brain is like, oh, that's important because it's a thing on my list. And I really appreciate that you put that thought into it. And like I think this was a really great workshop. So I'm going to recommend everybody come to your one on the 19th.
Thank you, Candace. Yeah,
Great
thank you so
team.
much. And the floor is open if there's feedback, questions, concerns. And I know in particular from my own experience in groups that when there's something you want to say that isn't necessarily glowing, something about something that's not working for you or something about a concern that you have is very hard to bring up. And the floor is open for that as well. So if there's an aspect of this that you're like, not so relevant to me, or I don't think you got that right. I think you need to tweak this. The floor is also open for that. And we can take this moment to have a breath and sit together, look at one another's face, appreciate the presence, the community, the connection here.